Good morning, everyone. My name is Juan Alvez. I work at Extension at the Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Grazing. I also work with soils, and we just started an agroforestry program. And I want to give you some information about that program. The agroforestry program, we are recruiting farmers to plant trees. I need to say that we still have the funds paused, but they are in review. Okay. But this program pays $65 per tree for silver pasture, for other cropping, and for hedgerows. Okay. If you are interested, please contact me. So now I'm going to start my presentation. I have 4 projects. One is researching strategies for improving Vermont soil health through perennial grazing crop development using kernza, intermediate wheatgrass. The second project is a novel approach to expand our understanding of alfalfa hay spoilage and improve the efficiency of hay preservatives. The third project I'm going to glance on is managing pasture for healthy farms and soils across Vermont. And the last one is demonstrating the effects of biological and mechanical compaction, best management practices on soil properties. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first one. This project was a 3-year project with Dartmouth College. Caitlin Hicks Price was the PI in Dartmouth, and then her PhD student, Andrew Lane, who also works at the Forest Service. And it was funded by the NFCS. This is good acknowledgement. Intermediate wheatgrass came to life, but people started talking about more and more because the Land Institute started breeding and developing a perennial variety of these Pyrium intermedium, and it says that it can reach 9 feet. Its roots can reach 9 feet. We thought this is a great project to test with grazing, even if it produces grain as well as a grass. So we nothing to lose. And at the same time, we can test 2 things. We can test pasture cropping, which is super difficult. And we can test how much soil carbon we can sequester with this, right? So it seems easy, but let's see. The project goals. So here are the project goals. I think I said it before. Test the efficacy of using this grass to increase soil organic matter, improve soil health, providing both forage for grazing and silage, and reduce runoff and increase soil carbon sequestration and improve water quality, basically. We had 3 farms across Vermont to test over 3 years. These are our methods, consisting of field work, lab analysis, and then outreach, what I'm doing right now. We had to prepare the field for seeding, for drilling. We did no-till drill in 2 farms, and we did termination in 1 farm at Orwell, and then we no-till drill, and also we broadcast some tests. We calibrated the machine for brome grass because the seeds are similar, very similar. Okay. So these are the dates in which we seeded. These are the farms, the acreage, and the methods that we used. And these are the pounds to the acre. Results and conclusions for these.
It grew less in my driveway, but it spilled
at Nico's driveway, but it didn't grow in the field. But the seeds are there, so they make it. Just to make sure, we tested the viability of the seeds, and they were viable. And we tested in the lab. We grew them in a greenhouse. They were grown. Okay. We think about the effectiveness of pasture cropping, and I don't want to blame the practice. I want to blame the trials. Okay, because in order to work without herbicides or without any pesticides, and work with life and not with poisons, we have to make sure that all the ducks are in a row, whether of residual, partial residual, and time. And sometimes some of these things are not aligned, and then things like this happen. But it does grow when you do it conventionally, right? I wouldn't give up on pasture cropping with kernza, but I do like a more thorough chapter with kernza later. Okay. Next project is a novel approach to expanding our understanding of alfalfa-based foliage. This project is between 5 universities: University of Wisconsin, University of Maine, University of Vermont, Virginia Tech, and New Hampshire. Yes. This alfalfa spoilage for people who use alfalfa, and we have been pushing for diverse swards, and it's hard to find alfalfa. That's a big challenge. So most of the stands I went were like this: a mixed grass hay, grass alfalfa hay, and almost no one does dried alfalfa hay. Everybody's doing silage, high silage. Okay, so it was a real challenge to find farms. I could find farms 6 hours, 7 hours away from me in New York, but it was like a 24-hour trip. Some of the methods for this project, we were required to sample. If the farm had small square bales, we needed to sample 25 bales. For round bales, we needed only 15 bales. We would sample using a probe. On a round bale, we use the round side. I needed, if there were like more than 2 batches of hay, of alfalfa hay, I needed to wear gloves because of cross-contamination. We were looking for mold and yeasts, okay? We had to bag it, ID, put it in a cooler, then run some samples, and then ship within 28 and 24 and 48 hours. Okay, and if we had two batches of alfalfa, I needed to torch the probe to disinfect it inside and out. Right? Super, I don't advise that around alfalfa or around any hay. So I had to go to the field to do it because during the day with the glare, you don't see if something flames out. Super dangerous. This is the amount, the subsample I used to send to Maine. Several of them. We had 3 farms in Vermont, 8 in Wisconsin, 1 in New Hampshire, 1 in Maine, 1 in New York, and 1 in New Jersey. This is a national project. Okay. Some data about the bales here, much less relevant, but it's there. So we started, these samples were processed at the University of Maine. And they separated different strains of mold genera, and they separated the molds by location. And so these 3 are common to Vermont. And then Maine has a larger variety of molds. New Jersey has larger varieties than Vermont. And then Wisconsin has almost all of them. So Wisconsin is like mold. These are the number of strains across all samples. I'm not going to read these Latin names here, but Phoma and Aspergillus are the most numerous strains. Between yeast and molds, we got a different number of yeast and molds by location. I don't know why Vermont has only 1 farm. Maybe they want some of the samples. Okay, we run analysis by type and dose of preservative, and the higher the dose, the lower the amount of molds and yeast. Yeah. And then by preservative type, also the higher the dose, depending on the temperature, the lower the yeast. So preservatives work for alfalfa. We also run many tests. We just selected these 4 here, results by temp and storage days. They behave similarly. And also effects of preservative dose on aerobic stability and high moisture of alfalfa hay. So the higher the dose, all right, so let's keep going because I don't have much time. Managing pasture for healthy farms and soils across Vermont. This is a 5-year project that ends next year, 2026. The VLT, Vermont Land Trust, is the main manager of this project. UVM Extension, also participants, and also Final Ridge Farm is a participant of this project. Initially, we were shooting for 20 farms, but we have about 15 farms distributed across the state. about 1,095 acres, diversified livestock. The practices that this project supported initially were a no-till cover cropping, adding seeds to stands that were like with forward capacity, organic amendments, and rotational grazing. There was another practice that was originally, which was tillage. The idea with this is to test social, economic, and environmental practices. I'm going to show them later. And then we are piloting a sort of payment for ecosystem service incentive by practice with the national CIG. This is the project timeline, runs from 2021 to 2026. It's going to be a no-cost extension year, I think. But this is the typical schedule for the different teams of the project. There are TSPs, ecological research, social research, and financial team. And some studies and deliverables, we're looking at farmers' perception, cost of labor, cost of practice per acre, benefits of rotational grazing, with all the numbers. In terms of environmental deliverables, we're looking at management tracking, stocking density and rest periods, occupation periods, soil health, forage, yield quality, and botanical composition. In terms of outreach, we'll have a final NRCS report. We're sharing the data with NRCS, presentations at conferences. We have been doing farmer case studies. We're going to write policy briefs and journal articles. The fourth project, demonstrating the effects of biological and mechanical compaction, pest management practices on soil properties, is a project that is another 3-year project done in 2 farms in the Champlain Valley in clay soils. The goals of the project was to study soil health and penetration resistance associated with various biological and mechanical compaction elevation methods. The second goal was to monitor the impact of biological and mechanical compaction methods and the ability of compacted soil layers to transmit water. This was in the Champlain Valley. One of the farmers is here, and the other farm representative is here too. Both of them are here looking at this project. Both soils were like clay soils, very heavy, and were clay. We run the Cornell assessment of soil health, density, penetrometer, and moisture content. The management was normal grazing, so the farm could graze. We would take apart all the experiment. They could graze or hay, and then we would put everything back because we wanted to measure also the effects of grazing and hay. Statistical design, a simple CRBD with 3 reps and 15 plots. The alleviation methods, we use the Yeoman plow, the rigid one, not the new one. It was in 2014. And biological pasture cropping. So we've been tinkering with pasture cropping since then. The treatments, 5 treatments, the biological treatments, 1, 2, 3, all had sweet clover and triticale. The differences were in the compaction crops. Mix 1 had radish, mix 2 had annual raygrass, and mix 3, sorghum Sudan grass, summer annual. The deep tillage was the subsoiler, and the control was left as is. We didn't do anything with the control. Some photos of the establishment, more photos, but I didn't want to load it with photos. We run the patch test, Cornell soil test, on year 1 on the whole area of farm 1, and the patch test on year 1 on the whole area of the farm 2. And then we run the patch again on the 3rd year on every plot. We did it 3 times. And these are just the means, but we found statistical differences between year 1 and year 3. And you can tell here, I'm not showing the statistical differences. These are just descriptives showing year 1, which is the baseline, versus the different soil health per mix, per treatment here for both farms. So they're very similar. Some of the numbers of bulk density, we didn't find any statistical differences in bulk density. Organic matter was pretty similar across the board on both farms, same as soil respiration. This is a chart that shows soil depth on the vertical axis, and then it shows penetration resistant on the horizontal axis. Okay, and this dotted line here is equivalent to 300 psi. We had to convert it to metrics, and in metric is 2 megapascals, 2,000 pascals of pressure. And you can tell that both farms are similar, but they're not so similar. There's one of the farms, you can tell that one of the farms reaches compaction about 12 inches, 30 centimeters, while the other one in the Chapleau Valley reaches 300 psi at around 40 centimeters. Sorry. So we found many statistical differences, but I'd like to point to Sorghum Sudan as one of the best decompaction methods that we found in this study. So we had the Yeoman's plow at 1.14 megapascals on farm 1 of Hero Farm, and then the other mixes provided less decompaction than so initially, when we run the numbers, we had a very good prospect for the keyline plow, the Yeoman's plow. We ran the numbers and we got these numbers here. On farm 2, it's a better prospect for the mechanical, but Sorghum Sudan is really the winner here in terms of compaction alleviation. I'm not presenting all the data of this project, it's just like a summary. But the conclusion is that this research reinforces the value of integrating biological treatments and rotational grazing practices tailored to specific needs as effective strategies for sustainable soil management in heavy clay. Mixed breeding from both farms, achieving the lowest median soil compaction in farm 2. And then the contrasting responses between both farms emphasize the influence of site-specific conditions, including management history, and baseline soil characteristics. I think this is my last one.
Thank you, Juan. As grazers interested in creating more forage and just better quality feed for our cattle, do you think kernza has place here in New England?
I believe we can give it another try. Doing pasture cropping is not always easy, because you got to find the right time, the right soil conditions, the right residual.
Did it take in any other trials with tilling, or was this trial just for a broadcast?
I'm not gonna lie to you, I found one plant in Orwell. One single plant.
Yeah.
Yes, we tried both Atchison and Prairie, what's called Prairie Grill, Great Ranks Grill, exactly. That's owned by, they're both owned by the White River Compensation District. And we did broadcasts and we did rototill and hand spread and raked over it. None of them took. Now, kernza has grown in Minnesota, and as far as Minnesota, and is successfully semi-commercially grown by grain growers there. So I think there's a disconnect between being a grass-fed or grass-based farming operation and not having actually experience to use the implements properly. So there's a learning curve there. I've done oats before, and they've been fine, but oats by 7 can't kill it, right? I mean, it'll grow no matter what you do.
That's stuff planted. I missed that.
When was it planted?
Yeah, I missed that slide. Was it in the spring?
Yes. So we did this
June.
June.
Yeah, we aim
So
for June,
And
give or take.
we did heavy grazing before, and then we ran the Atchison and pulled up so much thatch that we were fogging up stuff. So then we went over just with a rake and a mower and a rake and to get some of that off and then try it again. I think I planted this stuff 5 times.
Yeah.
And Josh actually, the field he was doing this in, let me stand up, maybe easier to hear, was a clay, I think I had enough projection. It was a clay slope, slight slope that was basically bare, nothing was growing there, and other than weeds. And so he rounded up the whole thing and then went over basically a blank slate, and nothing took there. So my suspicion is, and so we had 3 different soil types, right, between Butterworks and us at the bottom of the limestone belt, and then clay over this side at Josh's place down in Orwell. Very different soil types. So my suspicion is that we were incompetent in terms of the technique of planting this, that it's not particularly suitable for a lush, wet environment. This is a Middle Eastern grass. It comes from Syria originally. It grows really well in Kansas. I went there. That's how the whole idea started, with a visit to the Land Institute.
It grows in Charlotte. Yeah.
And so I think it's possible to do it. How to prep the pasture is really key. And we didn't follow that through enough with this grant. So I think it will be very helpful for UVM to, especially with Juan having done a whole bunch of interplanting and pasture cropping stuff, to include that in a rotation, to really come up with the technical facts of how to handle this.
Because just to throw this out there, it sounds very familiar. A few years ago, I'm a big proponent of like the new Reed's Canary grass, like the new varieties, like low alkaline Reed's Canary, because it grows in all of our crappy soil. That sounds a lot like what I did a few years ago. I used the Atkinson from, what's the one in Parkway there? Yeah, I used that in Atkinson. And it was before all the floodings, like 2 or 2021, but in Atkinson loans, like the same thing, like cold, wet spring, and the exact same thing happened, like for the one thatch.
Yeah.
Nothing came up the first year, but now, 3, 4, whatever years later, it is starting to come up.
Oh, interesting.
The other thing I was gonna say is after all that flooding, I don't know how many other people have noticed this, like I'm over here, Lindenville, like that area. I think all of our soil was still so cold in June last year from all the flooding and just being absolutely stocked with water.
Yeah.
All of our fertility was bad last year.
Yeah.
Because everything got washed out.
Yeah, so I think the first planting was what, 21 or 22? There'll be 22 maybe we did.
So the same time,
Yeah.
that was a cold, wet spring
Yeah.
too. Because it just sounds very familiar to what I ran into.
And we failed in some other sort of hard to establish grasses with interseeding as well. So trefoil or meadow fescue, similar issues.
Yeah.
Some of these grasses require very specific conditions to thrive. Once they're established, that's fine,
Yeah.
but it's really hard to get it going. So that was our biggest takeaway from that. And it was comforting that we tried 3 different places, 3 different methods, 3 different farms. And it wasn't just, oh yeah, I screwed this up. So there's a little bit more to it. Now, the idea originally came that a lot of the soil tests and carbon testing done is in the first 6 inches. And we have so much transient water in our climate, in our rain regimes, that it's really hard to get to the stable form of carbon. And so having plants that transport that deeper than the 18 inches we can get out of the deepest rooted native grasses here was the idea to go there. And of course, higher energy with big seed kernel formation that you could use in the mulch stage or something without violating grassland flooding. Anyway, that was the,
But in this project was 36 inches.
yes,
We took
Yeah.
the sun.
yes. Exactly, and that was trying to get the carbon deeper so it has the non sort of washing ability to form granulated and more structured.
Amber.
It just seems like this is maybe more of a process whales. Since they're used to trialing kind of grain stuff, there might be a good place. They've also done some experiments with sandcorn, which they also have a lot of company with, and that had a lot to do with pH.
I think that you're touched on it, and anytime you're trying to do an interceding situation, it's all conditioned, but we do it in situations where you think we have the most success, we see nothing. And another year we'll do it the same way, and we see great success. It has a lot to do with the timing, moisture that's being available. You would have mentioned picking up a lot of thatch in those conditions and having that seed actually hit the ground, go into the ground. If it's warm enough, it's got all the fertility it needs, and all the moisture it needs. And then if you come through that competition, the grasping a lot of a plant. And so there's a lot of points in there that something can go wrong. So it's a very hard to dial in practice. Not that it's impossible to do, but I think when we want to come up with a prescription where we're like, we think this works, that's almost not even an attainable thing. Like you're going to have to be able to understand in the situation what you can and need to manipulate to make it work. And sometimes like it's just weather and we can't really control that. Be as ready as we can be to take advantage of those opportunities, but at the end of the day, it's just a variable in this thing.
And I wasn't joking when I said it was great in my drive.
Yeah.
So on gravel and a south-facing side, it's sponsored, had got next reflection, got great drainage, enough water, and that sand was awesome.
I would say one last thing. In this project, we didn't put seeds. I'd love to try the ribs because I think by doing 2 passes with these 2 heavy machinery, this is super heavy. The hay buster is super heavy. It's like very clunky. And so doing a pass with this and a pass with these, maybe if we do 1 pass with a rib sower, the numbers would have been different. But the rib sower didn't exist at that time. I'm willing to test the rib sower.
I still have some seed.